Welcome back to Unveiling the Covenants. We're going through this amazing journey of salvation history. And so now we're at the story of Joseph. If you've been following the episodes, we're at the story of Joseph now. And as you might know, if you already know the story, Joseph undergoes a tremendous amount of hardship and injustice, frankly. But there's a lot of lessons that he's going to learn throughout this time. When we last left him, he had just been put into jail for a crime he didn't commit. His master, Potiphar, he was sold into slavery into Egypt. He was bought by a captain of the guard named Potiphar. Potiphar's wife coveted Joseph. Joseph said no, and she accused him of rape. And so now he's being thrown in prison, which, by the way, as I've mentioned, is a clement sentence. This shows two things. Number one, that Potiphar still had favor for Jacob. And number two, he probably also realized that this is not true, but because of his stature, he had to side with his wife, even though he probably suspected his wife wasn't being entirely honest with him. Now, we fast forward, Joseph is now in prison. Potiphar is probably going on with his life at this point. But in a particular way, though, God is still using Joseph. And we've talked about how the head of the prison had nothing to worry about, for everything was under Joseph's care. Whatever Joseph watched over, the head of the prison had no concern over. God blessed the work of his hands even in prison. So let's move on from there. Chapter 40 of Genesis. Sometime after this, butler of the king and the baker of the king offended the Pharaoh, offended the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry. He put them both in prison. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and so Joseph took care of them. Now, here's the thing. One night they both dreamed, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, each his own dream. Joseph came to them in the morning, and they were troubled. Now, you might think, I get troubling dreams all the time. What's the big deal? There was a point of time in history where people understood, especially because they weren't so distracted as they are now, that they spent more time thinking, contemplating, and thinking deeply. And because of this, dreams had both a spiritual but also an introspective quality. I'm not talking psychology here. People believed that dreams spoke something to them about themselves, or spoke something to them that the gods, or God in the case of Israel, was trying to communicate to them. And so the God of the universe, our Lord and God, used dreams to communicate to people in different ways. There is a reality within which there's a spiritual component to dreams, and that's why prayers before bed are a tremendous avenue of grace, so God can use those prayers to come to a place of working within our dreams to communicate to us. So invite God into your sleep. Say prayers before you go to bed. Be intentional about that. Because as you do so, you are allowing the Lord your God to minister to you even in sleep and in rising. Now, I want to go back to this. One of the things you're going to realize is, as I've mentioned, Joseph has a capacity of interpreting dreams. He probably gets this from Jacob. We know that Jacob has some capacity of interpreting dreams, and Jacob pondered the dreams of Joseph. But where does this come from? The belief is that dreams come from the Lord, and the power to interpret dreams also comes from the Lord. False interpretations can sometimes be deadly. We all know this to be true when it comes to private revelations and prophecies. The same is true of dreams. You see this echoed in Daniel chapter 2, that Daniel himself has a capacity of interpreting dreams. Now, let's go back to this. Joseph came to them in the morning. They were troubled because they know that there's some significance to the meaning of the dreams. So he asked the officers who were with him in custody of his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast?" And they said to him, "We've had dreams. No one is here to interpret them." So Joseph said, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell them to me, I beg you." And so the chief butler told his dream first. "In my dream there was a vine before me. On the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, the blossoms shot forth. The clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." There's a bit of language at play here. I'm going to talk about the language in a little bit. But Joseph said to him, interpreting, this is the interpretation. In 3 days, the 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Now, this language of lift up your head, like I mentioned earlier, I was going to talk about this, is it has to do with either restoring you, or you'll see in a little bit it can mean something else. Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. He will raise you from your shame, because those who are in shame look down. He will lift up your head, and he will restore you to your office. And you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and do me the kindness, I beg you, to make mention of me to Pharaoh. So get me out of this house. For I was stolen out of the land of Egypt, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. Now, Joseph is pretty bold about this. Making this statement is also implying that Potiphar was in the wrong. Joseph really doesn't care. He's earned the favor of those whom he works with. And therefore, he knows who he is. He knows who God is. And so he's unafraid in asking for justice to be done to him. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he then says to Joseph, I also had a dream. 3 cake baskets on my head. Uppermost basket, there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered, in 3 days, the baskets are 3 days, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Now again, that euphemism shows up in the Hebrew, as I mentioned. It can either be lift up your head from where you are, restore you from shame to dignity, or in this case, it's a pun. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you. Now, watch the wordplay here. Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you, or Pharaoh will lift up your head from you. In other words, he will quite frankly remove your head from you, because this is what will happen. He will hang you on a tree, and birds will eat the flesh from you. And as we all know, the hanging from a tree, as birds eat the flesh, the body doesn't stay hung for long. And so the language here has to do with his head will be decapitated from his body. And so we're seeing here the birds are eating that which is at the topmost, which is the head in this imagery. And so the dream is foretelling the way in which the baker would die. And so the baker, of course, he's troubled by this. But on the 3rd day, it was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast, he called for all his servants, and lifted up the head of the chief butler and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief butler to his butlership. He placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. But the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And so again, Joseph, despite doing good, encounters the fact that he is forgotten. And such is the case for many of us. Power through nonetheless. Work as unto the Lord. Work diligently, faithfully. Push yourself into deeper life in grace by means of prayer and seeking the Lord. And as you do so, push yourself into his embrace, because he wants to hold you deeper in his embrace. And as you do so, trust him. The timing doesn't work out the way we want it, but God is in control, and he knows how to do this, and he knows how to do this well nonetheless. And so we look at chapter 41. 2 whole years go by, and now Pharaoh has a dream. And so this is how God has worked. 2 whole years, Joseph continues to serve despite innocence. Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, out of the Nile, 7 cows, sleek and fat, 7 cows sleek and 7 cows fat, and they fed in the reed grass. The 7 cows, gaunt and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and the gaunt and thin cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and then he fell asleep. And now, instead of cows, it's grain, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, growing on a stalk. Out of them sprouted 7 ears, thin, blighted by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And so he's troubled. And what does he do? He calls for the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Now, outside of Israel, it was actually pretty common for people to seek counsel of the spiritual and the divine out of people who practice divination. Because without revelation of the one true God, people tended to worship, in pagan idolatry, they worshiped multiple idols. Now, these were sometimes legitimate demons, but at the same time, some of these were also invented idols. And so the priests of these idols, the magicians, the people who practice divination of these idols, these people knew that they were dabbling in occult forces. But this was the way they tapped into the spiritual realm, because anywhere from a reluctance to just simply not having the revelation of the God of Israel. By the time we get to Joseph knows that interpretations come from God. And so what Pharaoh is doing is he's tapping into forces. A, they are beyond his ken, but B, even more powerfully, even more concerning, is the fact that he's turning to demonic forces for the answers that only God can give. And so there's a massive lesson here for all of us. Pharaoh will be given a bit of wisdom by his chief butler first. The chief butler said to Pharaoh, "I remember my faults today. When Pharaoh was angry with the servants, put me and the chief baker in custody of the captain of the guard. We dreamed of the same night, he and I. A young Hebrew was there, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each of us. And as he interpreted, so it came to pass. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged." And so what does Pharaoh do? He calls for Joseph immediately. And what does Joseph do? Pharaoh recounts the dream, and Joseph answers, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." And so Pharaoh then tells him the dream once again. This time when he tells the dream, there's a greater detail. The 7 gaunt and thin cows that ate the sleek and fat cows, after having eaten them, they remained as thin as ever, as gaunt as ever. Pharaoh recounts this. And the 7 thin ears of wheat, after having eaten the plump and ripe ears of wheat, remained as thin as ever. And so Pharaoh then says, "I told it to the magicians. No one could explain it to me." And Pharaoh said this, "The dream of Pharaoh is one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do." And so there's kind of providential reality here. God is working, in this case, natural events at a socio-political level, no less, at a governmental level, but also just a national level, for the sake of the good of eventually Joseph and therefore all of Israel. We'll see this in a little bit in terms of fast-forwarding the narrative here. But look at this. Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The 7 good cows are 7 years, the 7 good ears are 7 years, and the dream is one. 7 lean and gaunt cows are also 7 years. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them, there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of that famine which will follow, for it will be very grievous." And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. So, as you see, Joseph is connected with the Lord. In his life of prayer, he learns how to listen to God. And in listening to God, he obeys the voice of the Lord. Now, sometimes this can take the place of promptings. Sometimes this can take the place of a pricking of a conscience into movement in a particular direction. Nonetheless, the Lord our God works and reveals to us, his children, how he wants us to act. And in doing so, he gives us the grace to respond. Like I mentioned, sometimes these can come as supernatural promptings, but very often, for the vast majority of us, they come by means of an adherence to the revealed teachings of the church, the fullness of truth in Scripture. And so if we wonder how we ought to act, I draw from the wisdom of Paul here. Look no further than the pillar and bulwark of the truth, which is the church. For the church teaches us how we ought to live and act. And so there are truths that are magisterially binding because they've been handed down by Christ to his apostles to us to this very day. There are some truths, however, that fall in the realm of prudential judgment. And so you and I have to discern well based on what God has already taught us, for we will be called to account for them. Now, I've told you all of this so that we can go right back to what is going to happen. Pharaoh proceeded. Joseph tells him, "Therefore let Pharaoh select a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land. Take the 5th part of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine which are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." Now, this proposal is an exercise in prudence, governance. Where did Joseph learn this? Remember, he learned it in his father's house from a young age. He learned as he dwelled in tents how to administrate resources, how to allocate the blessings of the land versus the needs of the tribe. And so Joseph was learning how to oversee the tribe which had grown tremendously wealthy. When he was sold off, he didn't lose these wisdoms, these capacities of prudence. Even in the house of Potiphar, he exercises this, and that's how he gets elevated to the level of house manager. And then from there, as he's incarcerated, he utilizes these same wisdoms. And people find them useful because there's good that comes from the exercise of prudence. Pharaoh is hearing Joseph's practical wisdom, prudence. Now, you can argue that this is a blessing of the Lord, but this is also a natural capacity that God honed by means of Jacob honing Joseph, and that Joseph continued to work upon in terms of thinking rightly and acting rightly. And so the call for all of us is, remember this, every one of you as you're listening right now, God has given each of us capacities of prudence, of justice, of temperance, of fortitude. He's given each of us charisms and gifts. He wants us to work them. And if we're so concerned about living a hyper-spiritualized life, we will forget that being a son and a daughter of God is a call to responsibility. Children of the Father are called to a greater degree of moral obligation than those who are not children of the Father. And because of that, we have an obligation to work the garden that we've been given. It's not just about resting in the emotive reality. It's about understanding that the call to be a child of God in the sacrament of Jesus Christ, in the covenant of Jesus Christ, is a call to be like Christ, morally and practically. And because of this, when you and I say yes to the Lord, we are saying yes to Him using us for the glory of His name in practical ways as well as supernatural ways. And so we say yes to Him, trusting that we are going to grow in virtue, and we work at virtue. Because yes, sonship and daughterhood imply a commitment to growth in virtue and holiness. That really is the foundational reality. If we call ourselves followers of Jesus Christ, we must do what He asks, which is to take up our cross daily and follow Him. And what does that look like? The dying to self means the laying down of the appetites of the flesh for the sake of those things that are truly good. And so we become prudent so that we can die to our rashness. We become temperate so that we can die to constant consumption of pleasures. We become just so that we can run away from injustice and all those things that we think benefit us by means of the exercise of evil. And we develop fortitude so that we will stand up for that which is true in Christ, that which is good, that which is moral, that which is noble, even in the face of potential injustice against us. These are just the natural virtues, though. God gifts us faith, hope, and charity to elevate us to the level of the supernatural, so that the natural life becomes soaked by the grace of God and elevated into the supernatural order, so that what was just a natural call becomes a supernatural beckoning of the Father for us to become nothing but saints. The call here is to become nothing but saints. And as we keep doing this, as we keep pleasing the Lord in small and in great things, He will flourish us, as He does Joseph. The proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. And what does Pharaoh say to his servants? Can we find such a man as this, in whom is the Spirit of God? And so Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there's none so discreet and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, I have set you over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him to ride in his second chariot. And they cried before him, bow the knee. Now, this language of bowing the knee is a kind of divine declaration, but in this case, Joseph knows he's not God. He's been elevated, however, to the second highest office in the land. In short, he is a kind of prime minister, and so a foreshadowing of Peter and his role in Christ's kingdom. But we go back to this. Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah. In Egyptian, it means God speaks, he lives. God speaks, he lives. And the reason why is because for the magicians and for all those who dabbled with pagan idolatry, whenever their quote-unquote gods spoke to them, there was a fear of death, because these gods, if they were demons, were capricious, and they would often take lives, they would take blood. And yet here is the benevolent God of the universe, the God of Israel, the God who is love itself, speaking to Joseph for the sake of generosity and benevolence. And Joseph hears this and he lives. God speaks, he lives. And so Pharaoh then gives him in marriage to Asenath, who is a daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. Now, the name Potiphar might well be a play on the name Potiphar in the past. Now remember, Potiphar had Joseph put in prison. He was just a captain of the guard. And now Joseph has been elevated to the second highest office in the land. The man who shamed him now answers to him. The man who put him in prison is now subservient to him. And so this language here is a play. It might well be that the person's name is Potiphar, but the language is also a play that even the injustice that was caused to him in the past is now elevated to him as a reason for rejoicing. Because more than a captain of the guard, though, he marries Asenath, who is a daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On. And the priests, the magicians, held a high rank of favor spiritually and politically in the land of Egypt, as was the case for most Near Eastern cultures. Joseph has now not only been elevated to prime minister, he's also, in the case of Egyptian nobility, been elevated to a kind of noble life. He is nobility now, at a higher rank than Potiphar ever was. And so, both in terms of social standing and socio-political authority, Joseph has been elevated in the sight of all those who will him harm. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, went through all the lands of Egypt, and he administrated well. During those 7 years, he erected barns and gathered a fifth of all that was harvested for all those 7 years in preparation. And when there was plenty in the land of Egypt, he stored up food. And before the year of famine came, Joseph, by the way, he gets blessed by the Lord for a lot of reasons, one of which is he has 2 sons from Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. Manasseh means the Lord has helped me forget. The Lord has helped me forget the injustices that have happened to me. For he said, God has made me forget all my hardship in all my father's house. The name of the second child he called Ephraim. Ephraim in Hebrew, or at least the play in Hebrew, means God has made me fruitful. And this is Joseph's declaration. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty prevailed, and the 7 years of famine began to come. And Joseph said, there was famine in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. Once again, take a look at this language. I've told you before, Joseph is a Christ figure. He's a figure of the Joseph of the New Testament. And so this Joseph becomes the instrument through which, even in fleeing to the land of Egypt through his own hardship, he brings about the gift of bread where none is. Fast forward to the New Testament, and Joseph, even in fleeing with his family to the land of Egypt, ensures that the bread of life is brought forth to the land of Egypt, but also to the rest of the world. And so both these Josephs are instrumental for the work of bringing forth nourishment, first practical, and in the New Testament, spiritual, to the known world at that time, and in the case of the New Testament Joseph, to the entire world. And so what happens? When the famine had spread all over the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph particularly, to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. We don't always see the end game of God's plan. We don't always see what God is preparing us for. Hardships become opportunities for us to work and grow. Especially men, I urge you, don't shy away from diligence. Fathers, mothers, train your sons in the way of hard work and diligence from a young age. Make them not only not shy of hard work, but desiring and loving of hard work and the fruit that hard work bears. Because God wants to use that capacity of diligence to also grant them greater growth in prudence and justice and temperance and fortitude. So that if the Lord elevates any of them to positions of governance, but even if you don't talk about public service governance, the Lord does intend every man to hold positions of authority, leadership, and some level of governance, from the family to the workplace to society to the church, and arguably the nation and the world. Men are called to lead their charge in prudence and justice and temperance and fortitude, and diligence must be a key virtue. The embracing of hard work, the sweat of our brow, must be a willing and joyful labor on our part, so that you and I can be more open to what the Lord wants to do in and through us. Even if we don't see the end goal, God is at work, both to will and to work for His good pleasure, that He sees to completion the good work that He has begun in us. And so we stop this story here. But in the next episode, we're going to talk about how, because of his elevation, Joseph will find opportunity for reconciliation with his family. God will bring all things to full circle and to full blessing. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.